There has been a heap of action in the dual cab ute segment in recent years, most of it at the very top end, and that top end continues to shift even higher. We've seen that recently with a couple of new additions, the Mercedes-Benz X350d and the Volkswagen Amarok Ultimate 580, both of them from German brands and both of them with big V6 turbo diesel power. The Amarok is a car that has achieved plenty since arriving here in 2011, muscling in on a ute segment dominated by the Toyota Hilux and Ford Ranger. But this latest model steps things up, both in power and prestige. Key to its talents is a 3-litre V6 turbo diesel, making 190 kilowatts and 580 newton metres, the latter giving it that badge on its rump. The X350d, on the other hand, is the X-Class that so many have been waiting for, bringing a true Mercedes-Benz engine to the ute that comes out of a Nissan factory. There's been a lot of anticipation about this car, the Mercedes-Benz X-Class generally, but the X350d, the V6 version, this is the proper Merc in terms of the engine. So instead of that Nissan Source 2.3, you've got a 3-litre V6 turbo diesel, 190 kilowatts of power, 550 newton metres of torque. Ever so close to that Volksy, and there is a heap of grunt when you need it. One area it's not so great at is how it feeds that grunt on, particularly from a standstill. You've got a heap of lag when you first hit the throttle, so roll up, pull it up to a stop, and give it a boot, and it just takes a while to finally wake up and say, okay, now you want that 550 newton metres. The X350 also gets a completely different four-wheel drive system to the X250 that we've seen here before. So instead of a part-time system, full-time all-wheel drive. So that's great for traction, obviously on gravel roads, fast gravel roads, and also means you don't have to think about it when you go off-road. You've got proper low-range gears, and you can do a bit with them. There's a locking rear diff, locking centre diff, so dial it all up. And you can get a fair bit done. This thing certainly has plenty of traction when you need it. All is not perfect though. That throttle response starts to play its part here. When you're looking for smaller adjustments and just to try and ease over something, sometimes you go from having not much to having a heck of a lot. So you just got to try and get used to it and build that torque up, get the turbo boosting a bit, but not too much. It is better in low range thanks to that lower gearing, although the issue is still there. Still, the X-Class wins back marks with its approach and departure angles, each slightly higher than the Amarok. That's not to say it's not prone to scraping some of that flashy paintwork outside, but it does a marginally better job keeping things tucked away. Combined with that low range gearing, it makes for a more competent off-roader. The Merc feels tough, it feels solid, and it's impressively quiet. So you drive on a freeway at 100 k's an hour, it does a really good job of quelling those noises you don't want. That's important. Pretty much any big adventure in Australia is going to involve a lot of 100km/h country roads just to get there. Having that extra comfort, that more relaxed cabin makes a huge difference. Value is somewhere that it gets a little bit trickier to justify in the X-Class. You're definitely paying for that badge somewhere. This one we're into the top of the range, the power. With the V6 engine, you're looking at a bit over $79,000. That is a heap of money for a ute. And yes, it's got plenty of gear, and you've got great safety gear, active safety, for example. You've got autonomous emergency braking, so it's got a radar looking out the front, it can automatically hit the brakes for you. But elsewhere, there's not a whole lot to say, wow, I'm getting a heap more than any other ute. It just doesn't have that feel about it. That said, it is nicely presented. You've got some nice finishes, some nice touches. You've got the big Merc badge here. It feels a bit more special, but 79 grand, not quite sure. Plus, you have to pay extra for things like real leather seats or side steps, the sorts of things that you'd rightfully expect when you're paying this much. There's one area the X-Class does fall flat, and that's with functionality in the cabin. Mercedes-Benz just has not put enough thought into storage areas. You've got a couple of cup holders, and that is about it. Things like a phone, a map, there's almost nowhere for them. So it's a lot of hits and the occasional miss for the X-Class V6, which brings us to the Amarok Ultimate 580. There's been a fair bit of interest in this Amarok 580. The 580 referring to the torque peak, 580 newton meters, another 30 newton meters over the regular V6 Amaroks. The challenge is you have to pay a lot more for it, so it's not through the Amarok range. You only get it in this one, the Ultimate, top of the range. That's a fair bit of money, although you do get a fair bit in it. There's plenty of equipment all throughout, but still, it's a big whack. And there's still stuff missing. Forget push button start, for example, because you've got to put the key in the Amarok's ignition to get things going. Performance is ultimately what the 580 is all about. You're looking at 190 kilowatts of power, 580 newton meters. But the Volksy also has an overboost function. In third and fourth gears, floor it, and you're actually getting 200 kilowatts of power. So it just amps it up ever so slightly, and it has plenty of pull. This thing gets along nicely. The Amarok also deals really well with Aussie roads, which is such a surprise. This is the first ever ute from Volksy, and in so many ways they've done such a terrific job. Suspension maturity is right up there. It does a great job of dealing with high speed roads, slow speed roads, off-road, on-road. Really nice. That said, it is starting to show its age. The plastics inside are hard and unwelcoming, below the standards that you expect at this money. Plus, the Volkswagen misses out on key safety gear. There are no rear airbags, for example, and no auto emergency braking, two things that are standard on the Merc. Some marks are made up with the driving position, which the Amarok does a top job on. The seats are really supportive and there's a car-like flavour to the positioning of major controls. So there are two mighty impressive V6 turbo diesel utes. Ultimately though, it is the Volkswagen Amarok that takes the victory only just. It can lift heavier things, it's got a more functional interior, and it is sharper value. So all of that adds up to a win for the Volksy. Not that the X-Class is embarrassed, far from it. It's quieter, better off-road and has superior safety. Three things that could be more than enough for some chasing the best in big power utes.